Good afternoon, everybody, and happy Wednesday. I believe today is Wednesday. You're watching Liz Live on Actuation Counseling's Facebook page. I am happy to see everybody. Well, I'm not really seeing you, but I'm happy to talk to everybody today. And we have a very exciting day today. Not only are we doing today a live relationship show where you get to ask me all of your relationship questions as we return to normal and kind of get away from some of the COVID talk. But we have a very exciting day today. Something very hopeful is happening, which today is the first time since 2011, July of 2011, that the United States of America has launched a spaceship into outer space. It's happening right now. Most of the news stations are covering it. The blast off is today at 4:33. There was just a news report that there is a tornado watch for Cape Canaveral, Brevard County, and so there's a slight chance that if that doesn't pass, that the spaceship may not take off until tomorrow or whenever it passes. But hopefully, according to the meteorologist, these can pass every half an hour, and hopefully we will see that spaceship launch today. So I hope everyone had a great Memorial Day weekend. And today, again, if you're just logging on and tuning on, is a great day of hope for the United States, and God knows we need it. With everything that's been going on, we are actually, for the first time since 2011, launching a spacecraft. It's called, oh gosh, I forget, something X, SpaceX, I think, or something like that. And it was partially sponsored by Tesla and Elon Musk. You should see the new spacesuits and helmets. It looks totally different than people my age when we were a kid and we used to watch astronauts go into space. It looked totally different, but it's so exciting, and I hope everybody will watch it. It takes me back to a time when I was a child in grade school, and when the spacecrafts would take off, we would get the TV in the classroom and we would get to watch this. So I hope everybody watches at 4:30 today. If all goes well with the weather, 4:33. And this is great hope for today. We need hope in this country right now because, as we've been talking about, there's such chaos politically, financially, and of course with our health. Although I'm feeling hopeful and I feel like things are starting to get back to normal, we still haven't entirely reopened as a country and gotten back to normal. There's still some questions going on as to what will happen this coming school year with our school children and everything else. So we have those crazy couple of months we're just getting through. And then today, on May 27th, we have the first spaceship, SpaceX, I believe it's called, about to launch in about 2 hours from Cape Canaveral, Florida. And isn't this exciting? There's 2 astronauts that are going up in space, and they are veterans, and they are both married to astronauts. And what was really interesting is when they were saying goodbye to their children, they weren't allowed to hug or touch them. So it was kind of sad. But in any case, so that's what's going on in the news. That's happy, that's positive, that's exciting, that's hopeful for this country. I think it's so exciting that we're doing this because who knows what this could mean for the future of mankind, and I think something quite positive. So let's hope and pray that this space mission is safe, and really take our hats off to these brave men who are going up into outer space. Okay, so without any further ado, today is a relationship show. I am a relationship therapist. I am a therapist for families, couples, and individuals, and relationships is definitely my favorite topic. And I am here to answer all of your questions and talk about relationships. And primarily, I love talking about romantic relationships, but of course, I talk about relationships with children and parents, with siblings, with in-laws, with everybody. Relationships is my game, and I love talking about it. So I thought what we would start off today is to talk about how we might know if our relationship is in a little bit of trouble and we might wonder, hey, is it time to go to therapy? Is it time to call up Elizabeth and get some help? So how would we know that? And the question, the barometer, while could be very different for many different couples, still there are some basic standards that I could share with you, all of you that are watching this, as to how you might know, hey, I think I need some relationship help. So the first thing that I would say we can all look out for in our relationships as a sign that something, might be off and we might need some help, is when you find that you are unable to get anywhere when you have a conversation with your significant other about how you're feeling. What I hear from a lot of couples who come in is that they all say, we're just getting in these circular arguments that sort of repeat over and over and over again. And I feel like it's the same conversation over and over again, and nobody seems to change and nothing seems to really be going anywhere. So, that is definitely a sign. If you feel like you've had the same conversation, 15, 20 times in your marriage or your relationship and nothing's changing and it's the same circular argument, that might be a pretty good sign that, you know what, maybe we need some professional help here. Maybe this just isn't working out. We're not seeming to be able to fix this on our own, so this would be a good time to call Elizabeth, hopefully me, or anybody, but of course I hope you call me. So that would be the first sign. The second sign is actually when the sex life starts to disappear. That is really never a very good sign. And I don't mean that if you're having less sex than usual because you're raising little children or, everyone's very busy at work. Of course, your sex life is always going to rise and fall, as does, the emotional connection in long-term relationships. But when you haven't had sex at all for, months at a time, that is definitely a sign that something is wrong. And while all couples have sort of a different sex life and they have a different idea of what a healthy sex life looks like, and that's okay because there's no right or wrong per se, when nothing's happening, feelings start to get hurt and couples start to grow very distant. And I think it's critical that if you're going months and months and months with no sex life, that you need to call for help, because generally speaking, the absence of a sex life is very symptomatic of a relationship in trouble. So again, you may have to evaluate for yourself, well, okay, we typically have sex every day, or we have it every 2 weeks, or we have it once a week, or whatever's normal for you and your partner over the course of time. If that significantly changes or stops, you need to call for some therapy, because someone's holding on to something and somebody's mad, and we need to get to the bottom of it. And often sexual issues are not sexual per se, they're emotional. So don't be afraid or shy to come in and talk about it, because I've been doing this for 12 years and it's no big deal to me. I'm very comfortable talking about the subject. So far, we know if you're having these circular arguments, sex life is in the tank, not happening. Those are two very big signs that your relationship could potentially be in trouble and might need some help. Another sign that seems to be pretty common in a lot of the couples that I treat is a distance that grows in between couples, where they report to me that they feel as though they are like two ships passing in the night, that he's doing his thing and she's doing her thing, and they're not connecting at all. And of course, we're all going to have days here and again where, we're just overwhelmed with life, or, whatever's going on, work, stress, life, whatever. But we always want to make sure that we make quality time for our partners. And this is a huge issue that I see in a lot of the couples that I treat and couples that I don't treat that just talk to me is that people forget about each other. They take each other for granted. They start just almost living like roommates and not living like a connected couple. And of course, when I say these things, there's always maybe a week here and there where you might feel kind of separated from the person that you're with. But I'm really talking about something that is becoming like a new pattern in your marriage or your relationship, okay? So the distance, the not getting connected, circular arguments, a drop in sex in your sex life, these are big red flags that, we might need some help. And those circular arguments, going back to that those circular arguments can be, about anything. It's not necessarily about something that's so huge or so serious. It could be anything. It could be about cleaning the house or doing the dishes, because all of those things, those little things that happen in relationships that seem so insignificant, are what build the relationship. So if you're a little bickering here and there, that's not really what I'm referring to. But when you have these big fights over small things, but they feel so emotional and they're just circling all over the place and never getting anywhere, you definitely need to come in and get some therapy, because you've clearly shown that you cannot get through this on your own, okay? And it's very interesting when I sit down with couples and I see what people have been holding on to, not for weeks, not for months, but for years. And, finally with a professional there, I'm able to kind of interview people and pull it out of them and understand, what exactly is gone awry. And you would be very surprised. I, as a couples therapist, of course, I'm very passionate about love and relationships and couples therapy, and I believe in it. I don't understand why more people don't come, even on a basis of a check-in, because I've never met a married couple in my lifetime ever that doesn't get to a point where they have rocky times. And I think that that's part of being married, and I think that's part of being in a long-term relationship. And it doesn't have to mean the end. It doesn't have to mean that your marriage is over. And we tend to, when we feel helpless in our relationship and we feel like we're not getting anywhere, we tend to think that, okay, maybe I could do better than this, or maybe I should, maybe the marriage is over. And I try to give my couples hope, because more often than not, the couples that come in for therapy do very, very well. It's just a matter of having, the right therapist and the right person who's going to jump in there and get dirty, in a sense, get into all your issues and not be afraid to unravel everything and make sure everybody takes ownership for something, because it's very rarely ever just one person's fault. The only time I would say maybe it's one person's fault is when you have abusive relationships, and that's a whole nother subject, which we have covered before and we can cover again today. But looking at the typical marriage, typical relationship, they're a lot of work, and they don't naturally always just heal on their own. So I can't encourage people enough, even if you think everything's fine, to come in for a checkup. You go in every year, hopefully, or every 2 years to your doctor for a checkup, make sure everything's working right, get your blood drawn. I would encourage every couple out there to come in, even if it's once or once every 3 months. Come and check in, and let's see if we can make your relationship even better, right? No harm in that. So those are the major signs. So I see the screens happening here, so I'm going to check out and see what's going on here. Ciao Franco and Enzo in Italia, my buddies in Italy. Hi Lisa, Bella, and ciao. Ciao Elizabeth, you are number one. We follow you from the Amalfi Coast. We love you. Oh, I love you guys more, and I miss you all. I can't wait to come visit. Hi, John and Katie and Lydia and Jeremy. Happy Wednesday. And Bella and James and Lisa and Philip and Todd. And who else is watching? Sandy. Hi, Sandy. And Layla. So one of the questions that I have here is, what do I do when I think I see red flags in my relationship? Okay. So if you think that you have problems in your relationship, you're probably right. You might be, I see a lot of couples tend to over-exaggerate the issues that they're having. So in other words, the issues seem like the end of the world when you're stuck in them. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're unsolvable. So I think that if you first sense, you haven't really talked about it with your partner, but you're sensing something's off. You guys have probably heard me say this 100 times, but I always go to the person first. Go to your partner and say, don't attack them. Don't say you always and you never. Those are two very bad words in the world of couples. But go to your partner and just say, hey, I really feel like something's off. I don't know if you agree or if I'm totally crazy, but I really feel like something is very off. And see what they say. See if they agree, disagree. And the success you're going to have with that conversation really comes from being able to have this conversation without attack. We tend to, in romantic relationships, we tend to get so angry because we don't confront things when they happen that we build up all this resentment, and then we tend to attack when we finally talk about it, and that never works. So if you think you're having problems, the first thing to do is, take a deep breath, think about it, maybe jot some things down on a piece of paper and organize what your thoughts are. And then go ahead and talk to your partner. And remember, if you're feeling something off, they probably are too. It's usually very symbiotic. So go to them and just speak on your own behalf. No attacking, no saying always and never. Just say, I'm feeling something's off. What do you think? See what they say. And then if they say, well, what are you talking about? Then be prepared to maybe talk about some things that are hurting you. It's very hard, and I'm guilty of this as much as anybody else. It's very hard when you're angry to do a good job at talking to your partner. So try when you're having this conversation to do it not out of anger, but do it maybe after you've cooled down a little bit. Anger can be a good thing because anger is telling you to move. It's telling you to take action. It's telling you to do something. So anger isn't a bad thing, but it's not going to be very productive when you try to confront your partner. So I hope that answers that question. What do I do? Okay, so we did that. Okay, so talking about, again, some of the warning signs. We went over some of those. We're talking about what to do about it. And I'd love to hear from you guys what you think are some of the major problems that you have in your relationship, or some questions that you'd like to ask a real live marriage and family therapist to see how I would handle them. Because every couple has their own case, their own uniqueness. And it's not very often, but it does happen. It's not very often, but it does happen that sometimes I have to tell a couple, this isn't working. I mean, there's nothing I can do for you. Why do I say that? Those are for the couples that are usually somebody in the couple is abusive. The couple is going places and crossing boundaries that they should never cross. And the boundaries, and maybe that would be a good thing to discuss, which is, how do I know what my boundaries are as far as, where can I not go? So when people ask me this, and this is a common question, I always tell people, think about the sport of boxing, which is my favorite sport, okay? So think about the sport of boxing, And in the sport of boxing, although it's a brutal and rugged sport, there are still rules. So even though in boxing you're in the ring and you're throwing punches and you're trying to knock the person out and you're trying to win and you have to be aggressive and first to win the fight, there's still rules. You can't hit below the belt. You can't hold. You can't kick someone in the balls. You can't bite someone's ear off, which has happened to Evander Holyfield when Mike Tyson bit his ear off, or a big piece of his ear off, and that was back in the 90s. That's an analogy for, so even in boxing, there's rules. So even in with married couples and people who are in long-term relationships, there are still rules. There are still places that you should just not go with your partner, okay? One of those, which I'm sure many of you who are watching, violate, is swearing at them. I'm not saying that you can't say, oh, F this, in generally speaking in your life. I mean, I do it. A lot of people do it, okay? I'm not trying to pretend like I'm on some pedestal here. I swear quite a bit. But I don't swear at my boyfriend. I don't swear at him. At least I don't think I do. Once you cross that line and you call somebody the bitch word, I hate that word. Once you tell them to go F themselves and it's getting really contemptuous, where's it going from there? It's only going to get worse. And those things hurt so much when it's with your significant other. It's really, really painful. It's one thing to have it come from a stranger, but when it comes from the person that you want to feel the safest with and the most connected, it feels like such a betrayal and such a violation. So swearing, number one, cut it out. Not healthy for relationships at someone directly. That's never good. Yelling and screaming, it's going to happen from time to time when we get into a really heated argument, but it doesn't really, it's not productive, generally speaking. Yelling and screaming in every fight is a bad sign. It's showing me that you and your significant other do not know how to communicate. Would you yell and scream every time you talk to your best friend or, your coworker? Of course not. So why are you doing it with the person who loves you the most? Doesn't make any sense. So swearing, screaming and yelling, those are calling people names and like real put downs and criticizing are other no-nos. Put downs, again, I've heard couples come in and call each other losers, pieces of what, they're whores, they're this, they're that. Once I have a couple that goes there on the regular, I'm in trouble as a therapist because it's very hard to teach those type of couples new tricks. They're so used to going there, they're so volatile, and they don't realize the damage that it causes. That it can be very challenging for me. I'm not saying it's impossible to do it, and that might be if I find out that a couple I'm working with swears at each other, well, the first thing that's off the table that I make them promise while they're in therapy is no more swearing. But again, the swearing isn't necessarily, and the name calling doesn't necessarily mean it's over. It just means that you don't know how to communicate and something's not connecting, so you're getting so angry and so aggravated that you have to scream and swear all the time. So that would be something that we would have to address. And it's just like kicking someone in the balls. It's just not in the rules. It's not in the rule book. You don't do that. It's not good sportsmanship. So that is definitely something that you want to watch. And then, of course, the biggest problem that I see people always ask me, what's the biggest problem you see with couples? And generally, it is communication, but that's so general. But if I were to go a step deeper than that, I would say it's resentment. And resentment, if I were to try to define resentment, it is when you are hurt by your partner over and over and over and over again, and you don't say anything. And you swallow it, you suck it in, you don't tell the person how hurt you are, so it just keeps happening over and over again. And this can go on for years and years and years. I've seen it happen. So when it goes on for years and years that you're hurt and angry over and over and over again, you start really resenting the person and almost hating them in a sense, and you resent them so strongly that they could jump out of a building and save a baby and you would find something wrong with it because you just can't stand them, and the way they talk and look just irritates you. So it doesn't mean it's the end of the marriage if you get to that point, but it definitely means you need help. And it's critical. What I try to teach all my clients and my couples is to deal with things as they come up. Not that you complain about everything and you constantly are battling, because you have to pick and choose your battles. But the big things that are happening in relationship that are hurtful, if you don't say anything, you can't necessarily blame the other person for continuing to do it. It's your resentment that is part of the problem. And so it's critical that we learn how to talk to each other. So I'm going to try and read the screen. I don't know where I did put my glasses, but let's see. Let's try and do this. Let's see what's happening here. Here's my glasses. Okay, let's see. Amy, hi Amy, I didn't see you. I'm a partner pleaser. How can I make sure I'm not being used or controlled? That's a good question. I think that you have to ask yourself, am I getting my needs met in this relationship? Because there's two people in a relationship, not one. So two people should always be getting their needs met. If you feel like you're the one doing everything and the other person isn't, that's a big problem. And that would be something where I would advise you to speak up about it, because if you don't, it's going to continue happening, and then you're going to start hating or resenting your partner. So I think that, being used and controlled, being used, I always believe it's really hard to use your husband or wife, particularly if you've been with them throughout thick and thin, because you're staying there for a reason. You love each other, you count on each other, you depend on each other. I don't believe that husbands and wives use each other. I've seen boyfriends and girlfriends use each other. People who are in it for a brief amount of time and aren't really committed to the long haul, sometimes they get into those relationships to use people. But long-term marriages, relationships, I don't know that I even believe that you can be using somebody, but I definitely believe that in any relationship, no matter how long it is, that you absolutely could potentially be controlled. And some signs of being controlled are, when you feel like you have no voice in the relationship, that your significant other isn't allowing you to be yourself, but making demands on you to be what they want you to be, or what they think is right, but not honoring or respecting your voice. And if that's the situation, then I would definitely say it sounds like maybe you're being controlled. And a lot of times people control their people and they don't even know it. And a lot of times people are just very controlling anyway. And so, of course, that's going to carry out into their relationship. And I think we're all controllers a little bit. We all, we all want to control our lives. And oftentimes that involves controlling what our partner does. And there has to be an equal playing field the majority of the time. It's not always going to be there. But I would say the majority of the time, you both should be trying to please each other. So I hope, Bella, that answered your question. How do I know if I'm in love, or if I'm in love with being in a relationship or not being alone? Isn't that a good question? All right, everyone. So she's asking, and this I would say is definitely for people who are single out there, who are dating. Again, to answer that question, being in love is sort of, it's sort of semantics, everybody falls in love and feels love differently. And I think we never love the same with different people. So you might think back to, your high school sweetheart and think, oh my God, I was so in love with him. I don't feel like that about my husband, and that's perfectly fine. That's not that doesn't worry me, because falling in love looks and feels differently, I think, as we age and we develop. So, but I think if you are questioning, hey, am I really in love with this person, or am I just in love with being in a relationship, or afraid of being alone? I think the first question to ask yourself is, what am I getting out of this relationship? Am I fulfilled? Am I getting my needs met? What are my needs? And, am I getting those things? Do I enjoy spending time with this person, or am I just doing it because I feel obligated? Because I think if somebody's mistreating you, but you don't leave that relationship, that might be a sign that you just want to be in a relationship and you don't want to be alone, but it's not really necessarily the right relationship for you. And I think that dating today is so different. And there's so much more, I'll say, turnover in the relationship department with young people today, and even people in their 40s and 50s who are dating. It's not nearly as bad in people, 40 plus, but I definitely think that dating my younger clients who are in their 20s that want to meet somebody, it's very, very difficult today, because everything is social media, organized around social media, and it's hard to meet somebody and just have it naturally happen. But I definitely think that's a good question, because I've met so many people, especially the ones who are in really unhealthy, toxic, or abusive relationships that, are not in love. They think they're in love, but they're not, because you can't be in love with somebody who is mean to you or horrible to you or only cares about controlling you. You can be addicted to them. You can be abused by them. You can be in an abusive cycle with them, but I don't see that on any level at all as being in love. I think I don't know what that is, being in lust. Is it selfish of me to want someone to take care of me or want to feel secure in a relationship? Definitely not. I think that's what it's all about, and especially as we get older. I know what my desires or my wishes are out of a relationship at my age, at 44, are very different than what my needs were when I was 25. And I think that as we get older, we're really looking for somebody stable and somebody who we can grow old with. And I think in growing old in this second half of our lives, not only do we want a companion and a lover and a best friend, but I think we do want to feel cared for and nurtured, because we know that as we age, our health isn't going to get better probably. And in some regards, life gets easier because maybe our children are grown and there's not as much responsibility. But I think that it's very fair and very healthy to want to be taken care of to some degree. I think if someone's looking to be 100% dependent on somebody else, that's not healthy. So I guess we would have to explore, what do you mean by, taking care of you and feeling safe? But feeling safe to me is a non-negotiable. If you don't feel safe with the person you're with for whatever reason, then forget it. But to couple that, I would say on your other question that, yeah, I think it's fair to want someone to take care of you, as long as you're willing to give that back. Absolutely. Hi, Dr. Metcalf. Thank you, Dr. Metcalf, and same to you. Same to you. So, if you're just tuning in, we've been talking about relationships today, my favorite subject, and we started out the show talking about what are the top things that we, may be experiencing that tell us that, hey, we might need counseling, we might need couples therapy. And those things were, was number one, the circular arguing when it happens over and over again and we're not getting anywhere. Number two, it was when your sex life kind of disappears and, and that's not usual. There's no sex happening. 3, we talked about that feeling of distance when you're passing somebody, but you're not really connecting to them and not making time for them. And then obviously, if you're getting into a lot of screaming battles and swearing at each other and calling each other names, that's a really big bad sign. But chances are, if you've been doing that, that's probably the way that you handle all things, and you might need a little tune-up on how to communicate with your partner. So I think that, all of those things are signs, and there's no shame in going to couples therapy. In fact, I always say that I think my clients are really brave to be able to walk into my door and tell a perfect stranger their most intimate details of their romantic life. And I take it very seriously, and I really do believe in couples therapy, and I do see wonderful results in my office. I'm not saying every single couple that comes in will be saved, because there's just some couples you can't, but the majority of couples absolutely, definitely are. And it takes a little time, and it takes a lot of work, and it takes putting your ego aside a little bit, but it's very, very helpful, and I can't encourage people enough. Even if you think you have no problems in your relationship, it doesn't hurt to come in and get a checkup or a tune-in. Any advice for getting over a bad breakup? Sure. Breaking up's hard to do, just like the song says. Breaking up is terrible. And I think what people have to understand is that when you're breaking up with somebody, it's like a death. When you're divorcing someone, it's like a death most of the time. Sometimes we're so happy to get away from people that we actually feel relieved. But even in those situations, I find that people definitely feel a great sense of loss and a great sense of change. So I think that when you're breaking up, it's a huge change. I believe that it's traumatizing on some level. It is a grief of a person. It's a grief of the life you had together with them. It's grief over all the things that you used to do together and all the things that you shared together. So I think that you have to understand when you're going through a breakup, it's very much like going through a death or a loss. Little different depending on the circumstances, but if you didn't want the breakup, it's really hard. It's really devastating. So anyone who's going through a breakup that's struggling, I can't stress enough the importance of getting into therapy with a good counselor, because I think it's important to take a look at that relationship and process it, understand what happened, how you got yourself into that situation, how you're going to transition into a new life by yourself, at least for a little while, until hopefully you meet somebody else, and how to grieve those losses in a way that is not too destructive to your life. Because oftentimes when people go through breakups, they get very, very depressed, and they have a really, really hard time, even if the relationship was not a good one. So, be patient with yourself and never be afraid to ask for help. I think that's really important. So I hope that this was helpful to everybody. And, if you have a couple that you know in your life that's going through a hard time, pass along this video. And I share videos almost daily. And if you go to I just started a Twitter page. So if you go to my Twitter page every day, I'm posting something having to do with relationships and mental health. I have a collection of videos on my YouTube channel and Facebook, and you could sift through. There's probably 100 videos that you could sift through and find advice on all kinds of different relationship aspects and different ways of coping with various problems. And remember, you can always call me and come in for a consultation or a session. I'm doing virtual sessions now because of COVID, so you could really call me from anywhere in the United States and get therapy virtually if you can't come into my office. So, I think that you just have to, fight for your relationship sometimes, and don't just give up so easily. I think that's a mistake. So always, even if you're on the very fringes of breaking up, it never hurts to consult with a good therapist first, just to make sure that you're not making a mistake and that you're not going to regret what you're doing. Okay, so that is our show for Wednesday, the 27th of May. I can't believe it's almost June. Tomorrow we have a very exciting show happening. We have our favorite political friend back, Doc Shirey, and there's so much going on in the world right now, so much politics, so much craziness and fun things to talk about, and things also that can make us, a little bit anxious and crazy. So we always want to tie in a mental health hook to whatever we're talking about, even if it's politics, because it really does affect our daily lives, especially in today's world. So tomorrow, Doc Shirey will be here at 2:30. So please tune in for that. Those are always so much fun, and we're going to talk about so many crazy things happening in the world. But if you haven't heard yet, today is the first time that the United States is launching a mission into space. The shuttle is set to take off at 4:33 today, so please go watch it. It's very exciting and very hopeful, especially considering what we have all been dealing with the past few months. And a happy early birthday to my best friend Amy. I know she's watching. It's not for 2 days, but I'm giving you an early happy birthday. And thank you. Love you all. And thank you so much for watching. And I will see you all back here tomorrow at 2:30 for Doc Shirey and our really fun political talks. Take care, everybody.